Okay, I hope my screen is visible. Okay, so Nagre, right? Okay. Uh, how experienced are you with programming? So we'll solve some questions according to that.
Uh, Good enough, I
Okay.
think.
Have you coded in any other languages before, or are you starting now?
No, no. C, C++,
Okay, you know.
Python starting now, Java.
Okay, so that's good enough. Quite a lot. Okay, so I think I had some simple questions also. Uh, so if you're learning Python, so why not? Let's just look at some. You can some Pythonic ways to do stuff. The first few questions are a bit too easy. So,
Okay.
but I would like to uh, show some ways to do them in Python. So let's start with this question. So suppose you are given a list of strings, and you have to mask those strings in an input string with stars. So suppose you have a list of say A B C D F G H I J K L, and you have an input string this. So you have to mask these words in this string. So do you know how to do this?
No, sir.
Okay. So manually you can do it, right? If you have to write a program to do, if you have to write a program to do it, uh, like in C, if you want to do it, so what would be your approach?
Just creating a list and inserting element.
Uh,
Kind
yeah,
of.
not really, but yes. So you have to check one. So basically, for each. Okay. Hi, Asik. So yes, we are solving this question. Just repeating the question once. So if you are given a list of strings, say suppose A B C D F G H I J K L, and you are given an input string like this string, so you have to mask those individual words or individual strings in the input string. Like ABC has been masked, DE has been masked, and so on. Okay. So if you want to do it in some other language, or say if you don't know how to do it in Python, like shortcut way, then what you have to do is basically for each item in the list we have to we'll iterate over each item in the list, and then we'll uh, for each character in each string we have to match basically if it is matching or not, and if you find an entire match then we'll just replace it with star. But in Python we don't want to do so much, we want to do it easily. So in Python, so let's say let us take an input, let us take these as input itself. So say L list star, so let's call it words. So suppose this is a word list, and obviously you have to give these in quotation marks. So I'll just zoom out a bit. Okay. And then suppose an input string is suppose this string. So you have to basically replace these words in this input string. So this is very simple. So firstly you have to traverse each word obviously. uh, so suppose you want for W in words, and then you have to replace that word in the input string, and your new string will be say so you want to copy the string to this new variable, so text. So we want to replace text by text equals to text dot replace. You just write replace, as simple as that, and the word in so I think this should work. Then finally we print text. Sorry. So replace takes actually two inputs. So what is the, you can see here it is giving some hints like old string and what it should be replaced with, and also some other things like count, like if you don't want to replace all occurrences, if you want to replace only one time, then you can give some number. But here we want to replace it with basically some stars, right? So what will this do if we run it? You can say that it has not done its work correctly. So you have to Now understand what went wrong. So one thing that went wrong is obviously these A is capital and the D. Let me increase the font size. Is it visible? I hope it is visible now. So the first A is capital, so it did not replace. The DE is capital, so it did not replace. And we replaced the word, say HI. So JKL we replaced only with 1 star, even though we wanted it to be like 3 stars, right? So if you want to just replace it with 1 star, suppose you want to replace it with 1 star, then what should we do is we should just lower the input string first, and this will just mask out, but this only has 1 stars, right? So if you want to replace it with say multiple stars, then what should you do? Is my net, is my video working, or hello, can you hear
Yes,
me?
sir.
Yes. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Yes, so now you want to basically find these words, if this word is there or not, and if this word is there, then we want to replace it with those many stars, right? So let's do it again one by one. So you want to first so we'll just skip this line. So we want to first find where is the index of this word, right? So if this word is present in the text or not. So for that we will do uh, if word in text. So this just means that if the word is present in the text or not. Okay. So if it is present, then we want to know where is it. So let's call it, say, I for index equals to text dot index word. So let's just see what is there in I. Print I. So this is how we code step by step, right? So we try to find what is the value of I and what is the corresponding word. So let's print it and see what is there. So you can see that ABC has been found at 0th position, so because it is like starting, and then DE has been found, and these have been, FGHI has been found, and JKL has also been found. Okay. So I gives you the index where the string is present, right? And so we have to replace text with something, right? So we have to modify some part of the text. So for that, which part do we need to modify is basically the position which starts with I and goes up to, say, let's give a comment. So replace I to I plus length of word, basically. This is what we want to replace, right? So so suppose we are doing somewhere in the middle. So what we want to do is basically we want to keep all the words before I. So we want to keep all the words before I, and then we want to do some stars, basically. So how many stars do we need? So we need stars according to the length of the word. So this basically means star into length W. So this means like W times star. So let me just give you a demo here. So if you just do, say, 5, so we'll get just 5 stars. So this is a shortcut for getting the same thing 5 times, basically. And then finally we'll also need to do the ending after I plus length of word part, right? So now let's see what we get. So now we get the correct answer, right? So this has basically replaced. So if we look at the text after each iteration, we can get some more idea of what is actually going on. So let's print it after replacing each word. So you can see, so first it has replaced ABC, then it has replaced DE, then it has replaced FGHI, and then it has replaced JKL. So this is the main line, and what we are doing here basically, let me repeat again. So we are first finding out the index of where the word is, and then basically we want to keep the portion before that word exactly as it is. So this is the portion before that word, we are keeping it as it is, and at the end we are also keeping the portion that comes after the word as it is. So this is the portion that comes after the word, we are keeping it as it is, and in between we are replacing it with the number of stars according to the length of this word. So any questions on this? This is like relatively simple thing. Any questions if you have?
No.
Okay, so then I have a question for the attendees. So question 1 continued. So now you can see in the question 1 you can see that so ABC was not a complete word, it was just say part of a word. So but what if suppose we are given these are complete words, right? So we want to replace them only if they are complete words. Like if ABC is not a complete word, so we will not replace that. So DE is a complete word, so we replace that, and FJHI is a complete word, so replace that, but rest of them we did not. So this is actually a very simple form of so this is something that goes on in real life. So if you have used say some social media like Facebook and Twitter, so you have, if you write some vulgar words, sometimes you will see that they are masked in some online forums. So in earlier days, if this question 1 what we did, this was being used, but this has some drawbacks. So suppose for example you are writing the word assignment, right? So ass is a vulgar word. So if you use a technique like this, then the assignment word like will come star 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 assignment. So that is not good, right? So a simple, very simple modification to that would be this. So if the complete word is a vulgar word, or in this case like some word, then we want to replace it. If it is not a complete word, then we don't want to replace it. So for this whatever code we wrote, there is a very simple change, like one line we can change and get this answer. So can you suggest what we need to do? Any ideas from the attendees? Of what modifications we can do to the code to basically change. Like don't think about it from Python perspective, just think about it from like logical perspective. What can we do to basically do the same task without yeah. Okay, you can open your mic and let me know too. Let me check the chat once. Just a second. Let me check the chat once. Someone typed something, I guess. If we can use if conditions. Yes, we can use if conditions. So that is one way to do it. So that is, yeah, that is correct. Actually, we can do. So we can check if so this portion. So we are getting I. So we can check if the character just before that is like a space character, and if the word after I plus len w, this is a space or not. That is one way we can do it. And the other way we can do it is we can just add spaces to the words and check for complete words. So so when you're writing a very complex program, I think like this is what I do. So let me just add some spaces to the like starting and end of the input. So we're adding some spaces to the start and the end, and for each word also we are doing the same thing. Basically we're adding a space at the end. So yes, so we just converted basically. So we added spaces before and after the words, and also before and after the input text. Can you just mute your yes, thank you. Okay, so if we run this, we can see that oh, some unexpected indent. Okay, so be careful with the indent in Python. So now you can see that it has okay, it has also replaced the words. So yes, so we need to uh, also add some spaces here, I guess. uh, yeah, so since we also replace the spaces, so this time we also have to add some spaces to this. So let's add some spaces, and now you can see that only uh, these two words have been, but not correctly. So yes, so this is how you should figure out. So what is wrong here is basically you can understand is so we also have counting the spaces. So yeah, so in hindsight I think your idea was better, just using conditions, but okay, this is one way to do it. And then yeah, so now it is finally correct. Yes, so in hindsight maybe your idea was good. So basically just use some uh, string checking, so you can check if the position before I is a string, is a space or not. So let's just do that quickly. And so we'll remove these, or we can keep those, we can keep these, just remove from the words. Okay, so no need of these anymore, so no need of this either. Okay, so this is what we were what we began with. And so we'll just keep two checks. If so, if I basically text I minus 1, so the previous character, if it is uh, equals to a space, and text I plus len word equals to space, then you do this. So let me scroll out a bit. So this is a simple check. I think in hindsight this is better. So this will also, I think, do our job. Let's find out. Yes, so it did the job. And yeah, so this is better to understand. So yeah, so whoever wrote that, so you were right. Okay, so this was relatively easy problem. So let's move on to the next question. If anyone has any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next question. So okay, I think we are already 20 minutes in, so let's move to question 3 maybe. So let's move to functions. So I think functions were covered this week. Okay, so the program itself is not very difficult. So you have to just check if a number is prime. So you should be able to do that by now. But so you have to do it in a function. So this is also a relatively easy program, but it uses a functions, and then you have to use that function to print all the prime numbers till 100. So okay, so let's first do it without using functions. And so how would you do it without using functions, and then how will you just make a function, and you will see it is much more cleaner. So let's write the code side by side again. Okay. So firstly, obviously, you have to iterate over all numbers between, say, numbers between. So you know that 1 is not a prime number. So you can start with 2, 200 and 1. So because you want to travel till 100. And so now you have to check if a number is prime. Check if number is prime. So how do we check if a number is prime? So to check a number is prime, so by the definition of a prime number, you know that a number is a prime number if it is divisible by only itself and 1 and no other prime numbers. So the very simple way to do it is so we'll iterate over all numbers till say 1 to that number, for say like I in range 1 to number, or number plus, or say we can do say 2 to number, say number minus 1, and then we know that it should not be divisible by any of the numbers, right? So if so let's do it in a let's do it step by step, and we'll make it slightly smaller each time. So we'll keep a is prime equals to true if if number is divisible by I. So this, as you may know, so this means that if you divide number by I, then what is the remainder? So this percentage sign means the remainder operator. If the remainder is 0, then you know that it is divisible, so it is not a prime number. So we set is prime to false. Right. And we can also break out from here, which you may or may not give. And then at the end you check if is prime, then you can print the number. Right. So let's try to print this. So this is the very simple way to do it. And you can see the prime numbers 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. All the prime numbers have been printed. Okay, so this is one way to do it. Now we'll make it, let's make it into a function. Okay. So to make a function, we just give define. So that is how you define a function. So a function means basically you can think of a function like you are making a machine, a separate machine, a black box where you give something as input and you get something as output. So you can think of it like a magic box where you give some inputs and you get something back. And you like from the outside you don't need to worry about what is going on inside. But right now we want to define what is going on inside. So let's call it prime. And we want to take a number as input. Right. And we can just copy paste this same thing. And so this is basically so what we are doing here is we are defining the function prime, and it is taking this number as input, and if it is like basically a prime number, then it is printing. Or we can just, instead of printing, what we can do is we can return is prime. Okay, so this prime number, it takes a number as input and it will return if the number is a prime number or not. Okay, and this is how we define a function. So def, and to call this function, to use this function, we can just do prime number. Let's just give it some separate names. So we can use the same names, you can use different names. I'm just showing you different names so that you can understand that it's not the same. You don't have to keep it the same. Okay, so if prime, then you print n, right? So again you can see it will give you the same input. So but now we have a different function and your code is much more organized. So now if you have to, so suppose you have a very long code, and after writing some word, then you see that you have made some mistake somewhere. So if you have your codes in separate functions, then it is much easier to understand. So suppose by mistake you had given here 1. Okay, so this is a small code, so it is easy to see everything. But suppose you had written a 1000-line code, right? So if you had written somewhere here, so somewhere here it is very difficult to find. But you can, if you have written it in functions, then you can understand, yes, this function is not giving the right result, so the error must be in this function. So you have to check only the function, and you can see, oh, I have set here 1, so this should be 0. So that is why we use functions. Okay, so one small Python trick so that we can do here. So this is how you would do if you are doing in C, C++ or Java. So you set a variable, and then if it is divisible, then you just set it to false, right? So the other way to do it is, so you don't need a variable. So in a function, what you can do is just return false, return true. So that's also another advantage of using a function. So if you are getting some number which is divisible, like some divisor you are getting, then you can just return false, and because you know that this is not a prime number anymore. Okay, so this is one way to do it. So okay, this also you can do in other languages also, but okay, let me show you how to do it without the return statement. So suppose you want to keep a variable like this. So instead of doing this, you can also do break, and you can give an else with the for statement. So let's do this. Sorry. So suppose this is the code. I'll just write it on the next line. So this is another way of doing it. So what is going on here is, so you can unlike other languages like C, C++, you can write here else statements with for also. So this else will get triggered if uh, the for statement does not break, right? So if it breaks, then it will not go into the else statement. If it continues and it ends normally, then it will like go into the else statement. So we can get a short. So obviously this will run as expected, but we can see a small demo of what is going on here. So for I in range, say 10, if I mod 2 equals to 0, break. So you know that this will break, and if print say no even numbers. So basically, if you have a list, so let's make a list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you have a list and if there are no even numbers, if there are even numbers, then it will not do anything. If there are no even numbers, then it will print no even number, right? So if you run it, you will see that there is no output, right? Because there is an even number. But if there are no even numbers, so suppose we are doing this, only odd numbers. So if we run it, so now you can see it went into the else part and it printed no even number because there were like no break was triggered, right? So any questions about the problem or this short trick? Otherwise we can move on to the next question. Okay, you can unmute yourself and ask questions if you want. Okay, then let's move on to question 4. So this is also not a very difficult thing to do, but like you have to just find the maximum and minimum of say a list of numbers. But what we want to do here, what we want to see here is essentially so in Python and also in C++, I think, not in C. You can actually take as many number of parameters in a function as you want, and also return as many parameters as you want. So we'll just do this. So basically we want to write a function with which will take any number of parameters as input and then return the maximum and minimum numbers among them. So if we have, suppose if we call say this function as min max and we call it with say 2 and 3, so it will print 2 and 3 because those are the only numbers. If we call it with say 2, 5, 7, 10, then it will say return 2 and 10, right? So this is also how Python's own. So Python also has a max function built in. So this can work with. So let me show you. So if you want to get the maximum number in a list, so you can use this max of say 1, 2, 3. Say so this will give 6 as output, which is so you can give a list as input, or you can also pass as parameters. It will also give. So this works both ways, right? Similarly for min or sum, it works both ways. So you can pass them as parameters, or you can pass in a list. So you can understand how we can handle a list, right? So let's write that function first. So define min max say list num list. So let's say we want to take a list as input and then find the numbers as numbers in this list, right? Okay, so for that what you need to do is so let's keep two variables, say int sorry, not int, let's just call it min num and max num. So we want to initialize them with something. So in some places you will see that they tell you to initialize them with something like -1 and -1. That is not a good way to do it. So what you should initialize these numbers with is some number from the list itself. So let's initialize them with the first element in the list. Obviously you can keep a check if there is at least one element in the list or not, but for now we'll just assume that there is at least one element in the list, and then obviously it goes straight forward. So for okay, why are we doing this? Let's just do return min of num list. And so to return two numbers, you can just do this max num list. Okay, and then we can call this function min max, say 1 2 3 4 5 print and it will show you 1 and 5, which is the desired output. So inside this inside part does not matter for this. So now we had passed a list, but if we pass it with say our normal numbers, what will it give? It will give some errors, right? So it did not work like max. So we saw here that with max, the built-in max function, we can pass a list or parameters, numbers as parameters. But here if we just pass as parameters, you can see that it gives some errors that it takes. So there's a very simple fix to it. So if you want to deal with a function like this, you just have to give a star next to the parameter list. So now what this means is that whatever you pass as input will go to this list, right? So now you can see it works again just fine. It works like before. So this just means that the function accepts any number of arguments. Also there is something, say star keyword list. Well, let's not go there, but you can give some other some other parameters also. So if you say if you want to print something, say print name, and then you want to find the number of lists. So suppose you want to print the name and then you want to return the number list. So for that you can just pass it like this, say my name is Soham. So what will happen is this first element will go to name and then the rest of them will go to this num list. So again you can see these numbers after the first element they will go to this list. But then if you don't give the name here, then it will throw an error, because now this Soham, this will also go into the list, right? Because there is no parameter before. So suppose if someone wrote a program like this, then it will give an error because we are passing it over here, right? So this will not work because these numbers are going here also. So in this case what we need to do is start from the first element. So just doing some slicing, and now you can see that we can getting the desired output again. So any questions about this parameter format? Okay, let me show you the other way around also. So suppose you have a list. So suppose your function takes say your function takes just two numbers, num1 and num2, and prints their average. Okay, so or returns their average. Return say num1 plus num2 divide by 2. So just returns the average, right? Or say you have three numbers, better with three numbers. Okay, so this is a simple function which takes three numbers as input and prints their mean, basically returns their mean. And suppose you have a error with say three numbers, 4s. Okay, so suppose you have to find the mean of these numbers using this function. So what would you do? You would call say error 0, error 1, error 2. Okay, and we can print it. And you can see the mean. So but we already have it in an array, so why should we again do this way? So the simple way to do it is just star error. So while calling the function, you are passing a star. That means the numbers in the array will automatically get converted into parameters. so it works again fine. So if you print say the numbers here, num1, num2, num3, you can see that each of the parameters have gotten this array. So this is how you can handle input parameters in Python. Some different ways to do it. Okay, any questions? Otherwise I'll move on to some matrix programs. Okay, I don't see any questions. Okay, so now a slightly more challenging question. But relatively straightforward concept. So I hope everyone knows what a matrix is. So a matrix is like a two-dimensional array in Python, and so to get its transpose basically means to convert the rows to columns and the columns to rows. So let's start with say some example. So suppose you have a matrix as, so this is suppose a matrix M, and then matrix transpose, so let's call it M dot T. Matrix transpose will be 1 4 2 3 5 6. So this is the transpose of this matrix. So you can see that the arrays as the rows and the columns have been reversed. So how do we do it in Python? Okay, so firstly the first challenge is obviously how do we define a matrix in Python, say. So we can do it with any question sessions.
Sir,
Yes.
it's 2 5, not 2 3.
Yes, sorry. Thanks for pointing out. Yes.
It's okay, sir.
Yes, so this is, so yeah, so 1 2 3 4 5 6. So you just reverse the columns and the rows. Okay, so how do we represent a matrix in Python? So we do it with a list of lists, you can say. So we can say M equals to 1 2 3. So you have say 3 4 5 6. Okay, and we make a list of list. Okay, so now we can see that how does it look like. So M0 will give you the first row, which is 1 2 3. M1 will give you the second row, 4 5 6. If you want to access, say, this means the second element of the first row, so which is 2. So this is how you represent a matrix. So if you want to show it a bit better, you can also do it here. Say, well, let's add some more numbers also. 7 8 9, and say some more, 10 11 12. Okay, so this is our matrix. So we want to now find the transpose. So how do we do that? So we need to replace each row and each column. So how do we do it? Anyone wants to try out first? Yeah, so I would like people to try this out. I'll wait for a couple of minutes. After that I'll solve. Okay, so we don't have a lot of time, so let's start solving. Okay, so there are again many ways to do it. So I'll show you the way that is easier to do on Python, perhaps. So we'll just create a new matrix M transpose, but we'll not add anything yet. Okay, so what we can do is we can iterate over the columns. So we will not iterate over the rows, we'll iterate over the columns. We want to iterate over the columns. So range length of m0. So okay, so what is going on here, let me tell you first. So length, so we already have m, so this is I think the, okay, let's do this. So m is this 4 cross 3 matrix. So if we do length m, it will give you the number of rows or the first dimension, which is 4, and if you do len m0, then it will give you the second dimension, which is 3. So 4 cross 3 matrix. So what we are doing here is basically getting the number of columns. We can do it like this also. Num calls equals to len and this. So this is easier to understand, I guess. Num calls. Okay. So you want to iterate over the number of columns, because in the transpose there will be those many number of rows as the number of columns. And so what do we want to, so now we want to create a say row, let's call it row only. So a temporary row equals to something, and then we want to add that row to the list. So you already know append, I guess. So you want to form this row, and then we want to just append it to the transpose matrix. So what should this be? Any ideas? Anyone can write in the chat. What should we write here instead of the blank spaces? I'll wait for a couple of minutes.
No idea, sir.
Okay. Yes, just wait for a couple more minutes. Okay, so let's start doing it by how you would probably do it if you didn't know, like the shortcut way. So you would have to do for j in range, say num rows. Let's do num rows. Num rows equals to len m. Okay, number of rows, and then you basically have to do row dot append m I j. So if we did this, I think this is how you would do it in C or C++. Print say empty. Okay, so you cannot just print empty like this, but yeah, you'll get an idea, I guess. Okay, some list index out. Oh, sorry. Let's swap the variables. So okay, so always it is, when you're dealing with matrices, so it is a good convention to keep the row as I and the column as j. So you can do it any other way, but this is like a basic convention. So whenever you're going over the rows, you keep it I, and whenever you're going the columns, you keep it as j. So if you print it, so you can see that it has been, so you can't really understand, but if I do empty, okay, not much change, but you can understand, right? So here original m was, so let's do it side by side. So m is say 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and empty is say 1 2 3. Let's just print it the good old way. Print sorry, for row in empty. So I think this will look better. Yeah, so now you can see that the matrix has been transposed. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Now you have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. So this is the straightforward way. So the shortcut way would be just to do these 3 lines in a same line. You can do. So we'll just so let me just write, and then I'll tell you what's going on, and that's it. This is all we need, right? So let me tell you what's going on, so you can kind of understand. So earlier we were iterating over the number of rows. Here also we are doing that, but we are telling Python how to form this list. So earlier we are getting one number and we were appending it to the row. So now we are telling how to form the row. So we are telling the row is so we are iterating over the number of rows, and each element in row will be this value mij, right? So this will do the same thing basically as before. So we are getting the same answer. So whatever we did before, and this basically yeah, so this thing and what we have here, this thing, this is just, oh sorry, this is, yeah, so these are basically the same things, just in like one line for 3 lines. So now you can like think about, then why are we not doing it for the outer loop also? So yes, we can do it for the outer loop also. So let's do it, this whole thing in one line. So now it will look a bit complicated, but it is not. So we just have to do the same thing again. We don't have to append anything. So we'll do this for just like last time we did this, and then we'll do copy as this over here, and we don't need any of these anymore. So now it's a bigger line, so let's just split it into 2 lines just to make it easy, but this is like one single line, right? So what is going on in here is, so now for each column you want this list, basically this row, and how you're forming the row, that is what we had before. So this entire thing, just one line, this will do the same thing as we did in so many other lines. So I'll just show you, this is actually just one line. And yeah, obviously you can also do away with these. Num columns can be this, num rows can be this, and this entire transpose is just one single line, you can do it. So this is the beauty of Python. So any questions about this particular thing, or I'll just move on to the next question since time is less.
Next question, sir.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Let's just go to the next question. Okay. So transpose was relatively easy. So other thing is to just get the given 2 matrices. We'll just multiply 2 matrices. Let's do this. Okay. So again, let's say we have 2 matrices, say 1 2 3 4 5 6, and suppose we have another matrix m1, and m2 is say 2 3 4 5 6. So you should know that to multiply 2 matrices you need to have the middle 2 dimensions should be same. So this is a 2 cross 3 matrix, and this is a 3 cross 2 matrix, or you can do like even more, like say yeah, so we can do a 3 cross 3 matrix also, 1 2 3 4 6. Let's just do this, so 3 cross 3 matrix, but the inner dimension should be same between these 2 matrices, like 3 and 3. So m1 cross m2 will be of the dimensions 2 cross 3 cross 6, now this is 3 cross 3. Yes, so the resultant matrix will be again 2 cross 3 size. So I'll not do the calculations myself, it will be something. Let's just code it out and we'll see what the answer is. So again, let's do it first the straightforward way. So how we would do it is you have to iterate over each row in matrix 1, matrix 2, and then you have to set individual values in the resultant matrix. Let's call it say P for product. Okay, so let's so this time let's first define a matrix first. That will be easier to understand. So let's create a matrix, and this will come in handy like what we did before. So you want to create a matrix of say we need to give the input matrices first. Say m1 equals to 1 2 3 4 5 6, m2 equals to So this is 1, 2, 3, and then oh yeah, let's make it like this, because why not. 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, and 5, 6, 7. So we have two matrices. We can just print and see the lengths. So length of m1 is 2, length of m10, so number of columns is 3, and similarly for second one we have 3 cross 3. So first matrix is 2 cross 3, second matrix is 3 cross 3, and so the resultant matrix should be, so obviously you need to keep a check that if these two are same, otherwise you just exit, but let us assume that they are same for now and we just want to multiply. So how many rows should be in the resultant matrix is the number of rows in m1, and how many columns should be in P should be the number of columns in m2. That is how the products go. So number of rows should be for I in range len m1. So as many rows in m1, those many rows in P you want, right? And how many columns in P1 is the number of columns in m2 for j in range len m2 0. So we are just creating a matrix with all zeros. So P is, you can see it is 2 cross 3 again, as we expect, and it's only zeros. Okay, so we have now created our initial matrix where we will store the results, and we will do it step by step. So
Sir,
yes,
there's one small doubt.
yes,
Actually, len of m1 is it has two elements. How can you say that len of m1 of I mean that index value is 3? I don't know how to.
can you repeat your question again?
Len of m1, it has
Yes,
two elements, right?
yes, two elements, yes.
Okay, okay. The next line, len of m1 of index value of 0. It is printing 3 in the console screen.
Okay, okay, okay. Yes, m1 0 means the first element, the first row. So how many elements are there in the first row?
Oh, okay, okay.
So
I got it, sir.
that is basically the number of columns.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, so similarly here we are doing the same thing for m2. So we want as many columns in the product as the number of columns in m2, right? So that is how we are setting it. Okay. So now what we want to do is so a matrix multiplication, I hope you know how a matrix multiplication works. So you multiply each row in the first matrix with each column in the second matrix. So 1 into 1. So the first element will be 1 into 1 plus 2 into 3 plus, I'll tell you how these numbers I'm getting, 5. So P0 0. So P00 means you have to multiply the 0th row of M1 with the 0th column of M2, which means basically, so 1 into 1, 2 into 3, and then 3 into 5. So that is how we are getting. So we are multiplying a row with the column. So that is how matrix. So I'm not going too deep into matrix multiplication. That should be simple. So we are going to do the same thing here, right? So I in, so again these things, range len m1, or we can do here len p also, since we, that is the product array, for j in range p0. So so this is like for row and column, right? So you want to find the value of pij equals to something, right? So you want to find the element at this I and ith row and jth column. So for that we have to multiply the ith row in m1 with the jth row in m2, right? So how do we do it? So for that we need to calculate, we need another loop which will traverse the internal dimension. So let's call it k. For k in range, this will be m1 0. You can do it m1 0 or m2 because these two dimensions are same. So the number of columns in m1 or the number of rows in m2 should be same, so you can use either of those here. So I'm just using this. Need to find the sum. So let's say sum s equals to 0 initially, and or we don't need a sum, we can just directly add to this. Oh, sorry. Okay, so what do we add here? So we need to add the element in ith row of m1 and the jth column of m1 in this particular location. So we want to multiply basically m1 I k into m2 k j. So this is how you multiply. Print, okay, again let's print for row in p, print row. Okay, and we should get some answer. Okay, we did not get an answer. Okay, sorry. So we have to do here len. So I was just getting a bit too greedy. Len, yes. Okay. Okay, so this is the resultant matrix apparently. Hopefully it is correct. So you can do it by hand and check if you want. So what is going on here basically is this part. What we are doing is this part. This basically this thing. So we are iterating over the internal dimension, the common dimension, and we are doing 1 into 1, 2 into 3, 3 into 5. That's what we are doing here. So we are basically multiplying the ith row with the jth column of m2. Now there are some other ways to do it. Like one thing is you can to make it better, to make this code more understandable, what you can do is you can write a function, define mult. So what this will do, suppose, is multiply m1's row with m1's ith row with j's m2's jth column. So that will make it a bit easier to understand. So what you can do is like return okay, no, let's just do something like s equals to 0, s plus equals to this, and then return s. So this way it is now easier to understand. Now you know that if you are doing something wrong, then it should be in this portion, because this portion is very like straightforward. Now ij equals to multiply m1 m2 I comma j. So now see how much more cleaner this code looks. Now this portion you are just doing one thing, you are doing one thing here and you are doing another thing here, so it is much easier to find out where your errors are. So suppose if you did not give here plus equals to, if you just give equals to, then you would get a wrong answer. But now it is much more easier to just go through your code. Let's just keep that. And yeah, so now that you have this function set up, now again like previous time, you can just do these 3 lines in like one line once you have this ready. So I'll just do that. I think we are over time, but just very short thing. So p will be, instead of these whole things, we can do p equals to firstly the outer loop, copy and paste it here. So you want to make a row for this each time, and each row should be consist of these many columns, right? And each value in the column should be this. So this is again your one line. So once you have the function, this is like a one line thing. So now let us just delete this. Let's keep it. Let's just move this line side by side. and let's move it up here. So now let's now see how much more at least to me it's more elegant. So now you have some function which actually multiplies the rows and columns, and you are using that in one line to just where something is wrong here. Undefined name p. Oh, okay, sorry, so it should not be p here. So okay, some slightly so too much shortcut. So number of rows should be the number of rows in m, excuse me. Number of columns should be the number of rows in m2. Okay, so now it's correct. So yeah, so now let's split it over here. Yes, so you can see in one line we can do it like this once we have this function. So that is the beauty of functions, as you can see. And yeah, obviously we can do the same function over here also. That will be a bit too much, but we can do this whole thing in one line also. If you want, you can try it out on your own. We can do this whole thing in one line. You can try that on your own. So I think we are over time. So if someone has any questions, specific questions, I can answer them. And then we'll end the class. Any specific questions? Like regarding this or any other small doubts about anything else in Python, you can ask me.
Sir, your teaching is good, sir. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay. Okay, so yes, so if there are no more questions, then but yeah, if you have any doubts, you can also mail me, or you can also post. Like if you have some questions specific to the course, then you can just use the discussion forum for that. There's a Google Groups discussion forum on NPTEL. If you have any specific queries, you can also ask me. Oh, someone is joining now. Okay, we are just ending now. And yes, so my email address, I'm just writing it here, and that kgpn.iitkgp.ac.in. Yes, so this is my email address. If you want to connect directly, if you have some questions you want to ask directly, you can mail me. Not regarding the course. The coursework is for that. If you have any questions regarding what I'm teaching or anything in general about Python, you can ask me. Okay, so I'll stop the recording now. And yes.